Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. We're producing this episode for Forbes.com, where I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today from London, well, excuse me, please forgive me, Anne, our guest from Cambridge, very different place than London, is Anne Cotton, the president and founder of Camfed, an organization that she has led that has helped teach more than 3 million children. Anne, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It's a very great pleasure.
It's really a thrill to have you, Anne, and we're excited to learn more about the great work that you're doing. I wonder if you would share the story of how you got started in this incredible work.
Well, you never quite know where life is going to take you. And I went out to do a study in Zimbabwe. I'd planned to further that study here in Cambridge. And I went out to the Zambezi Valley, where the Tonga people were shifted when the Kiva Dam was built in 1956. And what I found really had a huge emotional impact on me. I saw a level of poverty that I'd never before encountered. And what I was studying was the reason that so many girls were outside the school system, and the reasons that there were 7 boys for every girl in the school system of Zimbabwe in the rural areas, when actually the school system had expanded so dramatically since independence. And the prevailing view was that parents were resistant to the education of girls. And what I heard in that community was that it wasn't about resistance. There was support and indeed passion for girls' education. But the economic circumstances meant that parents could not afford the education of all their children. And because boys had a much greater chance of paid work, because they could travel for work, and because that provided security to families in the long term, it was boys who were favored. That was really the beginning of this journey.
And how did you build on that?
Well, I built on it by coming home to my family and really saying to my husband, you know, I've seen this situation and I think we can't walk away from it. There are girls who don't know if their harvest at home will be sufficient for them to return to school. There are very, very high levels of vulnerability and anxiety among the community around this issue. And I had had such hospitality, such encouragement, that I felt that as a family we could act, we could take some action. And really that was the beginning, that we as a family invested in the education of some girls, 32 in the first instance. And meanwhile, I set off to persuade others to join me, really, and to support the education of girls, and in fact, to provide a conduit and a support system into Zimbabwe. But I did find a very high level of skepticism. I was told that what I'd heard and learned really wasn't the case, that I'd had the wool pulled over my eyes, the community told me things that they thought I wanted to hear, that indeed if we supported girls, then 6 months later families would realize they'd lost their labor and pull them out of school. So there was this very high level of negativity towards this issue. And so ultimately there was no choice but to go it alone, to set something up. And Camfed was established.
Oh, it's just wonderful that you've done it. Now, give us a sense of how far you've come. I understand that there are millions of children that have been educated through Camfed. Give us a sense of the accomplishment.
Well, from that first 32 in Zimbabwe, in the Nyami district, we have grown massively, as you say. Over 3 million children have been supported in different ways. So we grew from Zimbabwe into Ghana. Because, again, there was a sense of negativity, it won't work in Muslim communities. So we went to the north of Ghana, 95% Muslim communities, and it was established and worked well. Then we went to Zambia, to Tanzania, and Malawi. So we have work that is established in 5 countries. We work with almost 5,600 schools. We have established partnerships with governments in each of the countries in which we work. 5 memorandum of understanding. That is a fundamental to our work, to establish partnership with ministries of education. And we have, I think, the greatest, probably the greatest achievement has been to build a network of young, educated women who are empowered through education. So there are now almost 25,000 CAMA members who are the activists and the change makers in their communities leading change, all from backgrounds of deep, deep poverty. So these are some of the advances we have made. And of course, alongside that, because our model is working and is seen to be working, then we are able to influence the sector. We are advising the British government on their initiatives around girls' education, advised MSAID. We advise major foundations, Skoll Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation, and in order really to build the commitment to girls' education, because it really does produce the most extraordinary.
What is the real impact on a girl, on a family, on a community, on a country from this balance of bringing girls into the educational system and getting them educated along with the boys?
Well, they are profound. You know, girl power is talked about a great deal. The power of girls to create change around insecurity, around child mortality, maternal mortality, population growth. And all this is indeed the case. But that power is latent without education. When a girl, a young woman is educated, then that latent power becomes active. And the choices that she starts to make in her life are indeed those advances are made, those advances in all those areas. You begin to see dramatic change in child mortality, in child marriage, in maternal mortality, because you are extending the education of girls into their young adulthood. You are extending their analytical powers. You are extending their ability to absorb information, and you are creating, really the foundations for the next generation, and a new generation that is not then born into poverty. So as we see our CAMA members, we see that the decisions that they make in their lives, the decisions, for example, to become philanthropists, each of the young women in the CAMA membership is supporting a minimum of 2 to 3 children, actually outside their families. So what they do in their families is extraordinary, but beyond their families, they're also becoming the philanthropists and the activists. And I think that, a girl who has come from a very poor rural background, she understands what poverty means. She has been transformed by education, but she doesn't leave her community behind. She doesn't leave her background behind. What she has is a profound sense of compassion, a profound sense of empathy. So when you are planning initiatives, development initiatives, you have a much higher degree of understanding, a much higher degree of knowledge on which you can build really successful initiatives. So it's beyond, the changes that they make directly into, I think, planning at systemic change, planning at national government level. I mean, let me give you an example. Child marriage, for example, is a huge issue and very, very widely discussed. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues, Angeline Monamura. Actually, Angeline was one of the first 32. She is now the regional director for Camfed in Africa. And she said, what people need to understand is that in so many cases, families don't have a choice. If there is a grandmother, she is supporting the education of all her grandchildren. She's supporting the security, the future of all her grandchildren. And, a 15-year-old girl actually to be married. Somebody offers to take her hand in marriage and will give that child security. That's the way the grandmother perceives it, and will bring some resources into the family to secure the future for the children. We have to understand this issue from the position of that grandmother. And Anjali, of course, understands that, understands the basis of child marriage, not as something whereby people, have no thought or no concern for those, whose lives they protect, but actually they're acting out of concern. And we really need to unpick, these decisions very carefully, understand them deeply in order that we can create initiatives that actually work.
Yeah. Well, it's just remarkable the impact that you're having with your program. You mentioned, as we were getting ready for this interview, that you have a unique partnership with Kiva, and that's part of the magic of your particular brand of social entrepreneurship. I wonder if you would tell us a little bit more about this partnership with Kiva.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is a brilliant partnership, and I think a perfect marriage, because we have a network of young women activists, all of whom are in very hard to reach places. They're in remote rural villages very often, and what we want to see is the change come to those communities, not for young women to take their education outside and beyond those villages, but actually to create change within them, to create prosperity, to create jobs. So the ideas are coming from them. What Camfed is and what Kiva is a bridge. There is a huge concern internationally. There are huge numbers of people who think like global citizens, who are concerned to move the world forward, to enable those who don't have opportunities to get opportunities. So the Kiva model is one which does create that very bridge and creates a transparency between the giver and the receiver. But of course, the receiver is also giving back, because she is giving back into her community, also giving pleasure, of course, to those who give. So there's a huge emotional drive in this, as well as a practical and financial one. So that Camfed is able, to enable Kiva lenders and the Kiva organization to reach these very hard to reach places.
Well, it is a wonderful program because it allows the lenders, as you point out, to get their money back and redeploy it. How is it working on the ground? Are you seeing that proving to be successful for those who are borrowing?
Yes, indeed. Highly successful. So what we see is a real entrepreneurial drive. What we don't want to see is the development of more businesses along the same lines. Young people coming out of school and seeing on the high street, whether it's the bicycle repair shop or the hairdressing salon, with just 2 chairs, or the very small restaurant. We don't want the replication of those businesses, which actually is not going to expand wealth creation, but actually create more competition. So what we do is we support, because we have programs with people recruited, of course, in our country programs in Africa to support business development. We are enabling young women to be more innovative in the things, in the businesses, in the services that they provide, so that we truly do expand wealth creation. Because so often people are actually getting on buses and going to the local towns to buy these goods and services. So, for example, solar energy, huge issues in all the communities we work in around electricity supply. So many communities aren't even on the national grid, but also in terms of what is used, having a profound effect on eye health, lung health. So the solar energy that is provided through some of the entrepreneurs, actually addressing the availability of power, but also at the same time addressing the health challenges that are created by the alternatives. So that's one example. Of course, the proliferation of mobile phone technology means that young women connect with each other, and through our network, the network of CAMA, they have a ready business community. So I was in Zambia working with a young woman who was importing bags and shoes from across the Tanzanian border, where they keep her, and she was looking at the market and creating more profit as a result. And when she got her new delivery, when she got back to the community, she sent out a text. All the CAMA members said, "Come, I'm back. They're here. They're ready." Using that kind of marketing, and so the entrepreneurship and the innovation is coming through in many different ways, and Kiva is enabling that. I think the fact that people are connected to a global community is also an incentive. I think, wow, somebody in the United States is prepared to invest in me. And that of itself, I think, is very empowering. It has a profound psychological impact.
It certainly does. Well, Anne, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. It's just a thrill to hear about the tremendous things you've done, the great progress you're making, the exciting entrepreneurship that you're driving with your partners at Kiva. So we thank you very much for this. Before we wrap up, please tell folks how they can engage with you, how they can support your good work, how they can learn more about it.
Well, please contact us. Visit our website at camfed.org. The message that I really want to convey to all those listening is that girls' education is not held back by the poverty of people's culture. It is not held back by the resistance to education at the community level. It is held back by poverty. And as global citizens, we can completely transform by investing in the education of girls in a way that the parents cannot do because of poverty. We can transform the status quo around girls' education, and we can transform the future because we can transform the opportunities of the next generation. So really, although I think very broadly that message is still out there, that there is resistance to girls' education, what we see across all our country programs is a passion for education. And we work with that passion. We work with communities who really want to see their children grow out of poverty, and they don't want to see their children carrying on the intergenerational poverty that they have themselves endured. So let's really address poverty at its root and in the best way we know. And please, contact us, visit our site, learn with us, and invest in the current generation of girls, and we will see massive change.
And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Devin.
Every success in your great work.
Thank you so much, Devin. Pleasure to talk to you and to all those listening.
Thank
goodbye
you.
and thank you.
Thank you. Let's do some good.